Hey guys, Joe Sena here, and I am this week's Man of the Hour. We are going to get into Japan. We might live inside of a greenhouse. We're going to rattle some cages of some young kids at 4:30 in the morning, and we're going to end it all with a cold shower.
We now have Joe Sena on the show. He's the founder and CEO of Spartan. He's a businessman, New York Times bestselling author of Spartan Up, Spartan Fit, and the Spartan Way. And he's also a hell of a father. And so we're going to talk about all of that with you, Joe. But most importantly, you have a new show coming out on CNBC Prime by the name of No Retreat Business Bootcamp. And I think that when people think of the word retreat, everybody's like, oh, it's time to escape. And I know that you've been crowned as someone who encourages people not to always go that route, right? And to not always take the easy and relaxing side of things. And so first and foremost, thank you for saying yes to joining me on this show.
Thanks for having me. I can't get anybody to want to talk to me, so it's exciting when someone calls and says, "Hey, I want to be on the show." This is great.
No, I'll be damned, Joe. You know, I was listening to some episodes that you had been on with very, very, very big podcasts. And so I didn't think you were going to say yes to doing this with me. But, you know, when I had actually have friends who work at Spartan too. So when I think of Spartan races, I was like, not only is it one crazy hell of you know, a fitness boot camp, but most importantly, the brand that you've built around it as well. I'd love to uncover with you and to get into your head as a businessman. But again, I want to start with this new show that's on CNBC Prime with you. And I just take you as someone who ultimately looks fear in the face and says, you know what, fuck you, we're going to go after it and we're going to tackle it in the best ways possible and make sure we come out on the other side stronger. So I'd also love to talk about that with you and so much more too. But with this new show of yours, how did it come to life and what was your experience filming it?
It was pre-pandemic, and somebody called and said, "Hey, I'm going to Rockefeller Center. I'm going to go meet with CNBC. Do you want to tag along?" And I was carrying my kettlebell, and so I took the meeting. And next thing you know, I was sitting in the CEO of CNBC's office, and I do what I always do. I dropped the kettlebell on his desk. Not, didn't break the desk or anything. I was just placing it, and he thought I was weird, and and we talked a bunch. And I said, I've been watching CNBC literally since its inception, with everything else going away and moving, online, Netflix and such. CNBC is something that has not gone away, that actually has dug its heels in and has its place exactly where it is. And people still seek it out on airplanes and at night at home. And so I said, if it were me, I know this is going to sound crazy. I would do a show, the profit's cool, Shark Tank's cool, but I would do a show where I beat people up on the farm because that's what I do anyway. It's what I do all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
And I help businesses, humans, children, everybody become better. They look in the mirror, they get to know who they are. They learn to push past boundaries. And I suspected the conversation would have been like the 50,000 other conversations I had with this guy's a crackpot. He carries around a kettlebell and he's talking about beating people up on his farm.
Yeah.
But it turned into an interesting topic, and he said, "Hey, why don't we film a pilot?" So pre-pandemic, we filmed a pilot, and kind of exhausting because I'm running my own business. I have my own problems I'm dealing with, like any entrepreneur, and it was fun, but it was a pain in the neck, and because filming is right, and
Yeah.
he said, "Oh, you know what? We're going to do this show," and everything was moving along, and then the pandemic hit. We got shut down for 2 years.
Mm.
Everybody should remember that. It happened everywhere. And then I got a call and said, "Hey, we're back on. There's no better time to do this show." So we ran around and filmed a bunch of episodes, and it launches next week.
Next week it is the week that this episode launches too, which I think is perfect timing. You'd mentioned you like to, or is it that you like to beat people up, or that you feel like it's your passion and purpose at this point when it comes to, fitness and business and making people better?
This morning it was like 4:55 in the morning, and I woke up, and the girl. I have two boys and two girls, and I asked my wife. She was still sleeping. I said, "Do the girls have practice this morning? Because we've been setting up these private soccer practices at 6 a.m." And she said, "No, Jeremy, the coach, has to go to a wedding." And I said, "All right, well then they'll practice with me." And which is what I've been doing. I've been like
Yep.
trying to fill the void and just keep that consistency of every day. And my wife said, well, why don't you let them sleep? Today would be good to sleep. And of course, it would be good to sleep. Like it'd be good for you to sleep. It's good for me to. It's
Mm,
good for everybody to sleep. But
yeah.
but I know that the girls will be better. I know that we're all better if we put in that little bit of extra work and we're consistent with it.
Mm,
So when you ask, do you like beating people up? I just like getting the most out of everything, getting the
mm,
most out of, not wasting the food, getting the most out of myself, getting the most out of everybody around me. Even if I don't know you, I want to like, I
mm.
remember once I was in an airport, this guy was eating Doritos sitting next to me and it kind of looked familiar. And I grabbed the bag out of his hand. I didn't really know him. It turned out to be Tracy Morgan. Right?
Yeah.
So, like,
Give me
what
that
do you
bag of Doritos.
fuck are you doing? I was like, dude, what do you do? Why are you eating these?
Yeah.
And we got into a conversation and it was again, it wasn't about beating him up. It was
Sure.
about I know he didn't want to eat them anyway. I know you
Mm,
don't want to eat them. I know you want to get out of bed. I know I want to get out of bed. So like my job is
mm,
to help you do what you want to do anyway.
mm. Yeah. And I could imagine that's what kind of gets you up in the morning then at 4:45 to then understand that like, well, if everyone around you is almost, it's not that they would be relying on you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of folks lean on you when they listen to you, when they watch you, when they, especially now with the show coming out too, if you think about it, like so people are going to tune into this and you're not just coaching the folks that were on the farm with you. I think that as a viewer myself, even there's a lot to be learned through your expertise and the things that you're challenging people to do. And then more on challenges, Joe, when you think about it, I was like Joe, though, Doe, but Joe, when you think about challenging people, have you found that as your whatever it might be through Spartan and fitness and or this new show and people in business, is there a part where you've noticed when people are willing to take on more and challenge themselves more? And what does that usually look like throughout the process? Because I would take it that people are normally pretty fearful to some extent to face whatever challenge that might be. But at what point in your coaching have you seen folks say, you know what, screw it, I'm going all the way in, balls to the wall. We're going to, see the finish line.
Do you ever take a cold shower?
Yeah, and I hate it. Cold plunge too.
It sucks, right?
Yep.
But but after a little while, you start to get comfortable in it. But it's that moment that you transfer from comfortable to uncomfortable that sucks. And when you ask, like, is there a moment? When do people like dig in and take on the challenge? Like, maybe here's a better analogy. If you and I like were plants and we were growing up in a greenhouse and it was climate controlled and we were watered on demand and everything was perfect, right? When we actually had to go outside, it'd be scary. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard. And those first few moments, like taking the cold shower, you're like resisting, you're holding back, you're fearful. All the worst possible outcomes are running through your mind. Then it's sunny outside and the breeze feels nice
Mm-hmm.
and it's not so bad and we're not dead. And right? Like so you just got to do it. You got to put one foot in front of the other. And I've had 10 million people graduate around the world in doing some form of our crazy event somewhere. And invariably, once they get past that initial shock, they embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
Now that doesn't mean the day after the race they're up at 4:45 a.m. and they're attacking life. Like even for me, it's a fight every day. But but you're one step closer, right?
Yeah. And then that has my head in a space of like goal setting and actually being in pursuit of something. You had said this just a moment ago as to making sure that you make the most of every single day. And that could be taken for however someone wants to hear this right now and take it. But for you, Joe, as you said that, I started thinking, okay, well, for you, what was that particular chase about? Making sure that if you're going to get up that early and if you're going to build something, if you're going to write a new book, if you're going to, do the show with CNBC, No Retreat, what exactly have you been in the pursuit of this whole time?
Just squeezing the most out of life. My
Mm,
my my mom died at a young age. My dad died younger than he should have. Everybody I know is that I grew up with, family, they're all dead. And so like life is so short. I'm not going to waste it and just kind of float through it and not just, I don't know, be as efficient and optimize as I can be and get the most out of it. Like it just seems like a waste.
Mm,
You've wasted lots of things in life, right? We waste food, we waste a day, we
yeah.
waste a moment with people we love. Um, but you can recover from wasting those things, right? You can recover. Tomorrow could be better. Next week could be better. You don't get another shot at life. Like we don't get to come back. You can't put another quarter in and play the game again.
Mm,
So like every day, I guess I'm tallying up in my head, where do I stand? Did I get the
yeah.
most out of it or not?
Mm. And then what does that usually look like? And I wonder because there's people who routine, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you have some form of ritual. If you're listening to self-help podcasts, I almost assume you either wake up or go to bed with some type of ritual or routine. But for you, Joe, what does that usually look like when you're calculating,
Yeah,
maybe
I
your
calculate it in
performance?
my head, and I
Yeah.
I do an assessment. Um, I typically do it on my phone and my notes, and I'm like, was I plus one? Was I zero? Or was I minus one today?
Mm,
Right? And the more plus ones I can get, right? It's that simple. Like, was it dead even today, or did I actually move forward 1 yard? Did I get something really impactful done?
mm,
And it doesn't have to be like I made a ton of money. It doesn't have to
sure.
be it. Like, did I waste a day? You know, everybody listening, watching should take a look at the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year, how much time they spend on their phone and social media. Like,
Mm,
because if you spent the whole day in social media and you were recording your output that day, like I just described, I don't think you'd give yourself a plus one. That would be a minus one.
mhm,
What the hell did you do today? You know?
mm. I might tag that as your title of the episode. Well, I
Yeah.
want to put no retreat in there because people will be like, wait, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Which I want to go back to in a moment with you when you guys were conceptualizing the show. And I don't know if it was your decision or the producers to name it that, but no retreat, we'll go back to in a moment. But like you had said, what the hell did you do with your day today? That's a question I don't think people are often asking themselves. And if they're not, I would be curious as to why. So if you're listening, maybe you are asking yourself, but if not, Joe, when you think of folks that just want to, and you know what's funny, I thought about this the second I pulled up the Zoom call. I said, you know what, I've heard you say a lot, which is um analysis paralysis.
Paralysis. Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know
like it happens to the best of us where we can't make a decision. And my feeling is indecision is worse than a bad decision. I remember when I was a kid growing up, my first business, I had this pool truck. I was running around cleaning swimming pools, and um, every day I had somebody sitting next to me in the passenger seat of that truck, helping me do my work. They got
mm,
paid for the day. I don't even remember what pay was back then, but they'd work with me for the day. Maybe it was $50 for the day,
mm,
and I remember them saying to me like, "Well, they're not sure what they want to do in life, and." Maybe they're going to go to school. Maybe they're not going to go to school. Maybe they're going to get a job here, but they're going to kind of hang out until they figure it out. And you got to remember, this is years and years of having somebody sit next to me, and I'm trying to understand their motivations and their
mm,
passion, and are they going to squeeze the most out of every day? And all I could think was, I think that's the wrong way to handle your life. I think the right way to handle your life is just to start doing
mm,
and then figure it out along the way. And that's why I came with Fire Ready Aim, because I saw so many of these kids. I never stopped moving. I never stopped building my business. I got a chance to look back 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years later, and
mm.
they were in the same exact place. They hadn't figured it out yet.
Right, right.
Whereas I was running this silly pool business, but I was meeting people, and those people were going to eventually help get me to Wall Street. I didn't know that, but that happened. And then I was meeting people on Wall Street, and they were going to help me do something
Mm,
else. And just being around people and action and doing, and you want to be productive, you want to have good character, you want to do a good job every day, but you got to be in the fight too. You
Mm,
can't just be like a spectator. Nothing happens outside the ring.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right? Anyway, analysis paralysis.
Yeah. Do you think there's an innate, and I promise we'll go back to the no retreat thing because I'm like, wait, I want to, because when you think of no retreat, but is there something innate in people's mind that they have that almost spectator um, thought process of being a bystander almost, not really wanting to make the most of it? And then for those who might be in that state, what would you tell them to almost encourage them again to make the most of the day and then ultimately their life?
Well, as you were asking the question, I was just thinking, let's think about how most of us spend our days, our weeks, our months, right? We go see, maybe we go see a hockey game, or maybe
Mm,
we watch a basketball game on TV, or like most of us all day, every day are spectators. So we're becoming pretty damn good at it.
mm.
And it's normalized and it's part of culture, and that's right. And most of us are not on the ice. Most of us are not in the ring. And I think we have to take inventory of that and start getting in the ring more.
Mm,
Start getting outside the greenhouse, as we mentioned earlier, getting into that cold shower,
mm-hmm.
right? Embracing that fight because I just learned 21% of 15 to 24-year-olds, 21% could potentially pass the military fitness test. 21%, 79%,
Mm,
no chance. So they're not in the ring and they're never getting in the ring. It's only getting worse for them. And by the way, you and I are not going to wake up 5 weeks from now or 5 years from now and that number is going to be better. It's going to be
mm,
worse. It's not getting better, right? Because
mm-hmm.
because normal is what normal does, and we all just become lemmings. And I don't want to. I'm not Mr. Negative,
Sure.
but but I'm trying to like wake up whoever your listener is that's listening to this to say like, let's go get some shit done today. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Especially if it's shit you care about, and that's often sometimes what we've heard almost 100 episodes into this podcast, like through your narrative and what you're doing as a guest of the show. Ultimately, I think will help people understand that in order to be X or be like X, build like X, it's almost understood that you'd have to just go get a bunch of shit done that you care about. So but okay, now I'm gonna bring up no retreat. Third time's the charm. So the term no retreat, when you heard it and you signed up for the show, was it what it really says, which is like this is not a time to take a break, it's time to do the exact opposite?
I think let's look at businesses for a second. 95% of
Yep.
businesses fail, and they fail pretty quickly. The longer you play the game, the more likely you are to be out of business. It's literally the analogy there would be we're going into the Colosseum in Rome,
Mm,
and we're going to fight continual opponents forever. Eventually, you get tired and you die,
yeah. Yeah.
right? Like that. I mean, that is literally the game we're playing in business. And what happens in business, because it happens in our real life, you and I just talked about it, is we become complacent, we become lazy, we walk over the same problems that we're supposed to have solved every day, and somehow it just becomes, part of normal.
Mm,
And what no retreat is look, we could certainly go to a spa and we could all hold hands and read the Harvard Business Review and sing Kumbaya, but like then we go back to the normal shit, the
yeah.
normal complacency. Or we could rip the band-aid off, go to Joe's farm, come to, where Spartan was born, and we're gonna beat the shit out of you. And we're gonna shake things up and we're gonna highlight those issues that we ascertain you have. And by the way, that's not abnormal.
Mm,
Spartan's got endless issues. All businesses do.
yeah.
And until you take them seriously and under pressure, make the necessary change.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I mean, that's what we do in real life. That's what I do. I've been doing it forever. I do it all over the world for individuals. I've been doing it on the farm for 20 plus years for companies. Um, Against my wife's will, I do it for children too and families, right? I take kids to the farm too, our own kids, and torture them to make them better.
Mm.
And yeah, so the show delivers exactly what I wanted it to deliver.
Yeah.
There's no sugarcoating, which is surprising because I expected NBC and CNBC to, just, oh, we can't do this, we can't do
Sure.
that, and they let me do it. Now, I will tell you, I'm probably not supposed to tell you, I will tell you, there were lots of doctors there, and there were lots of people behind the scenes, and they were trying
Mm.
to, hold me back from being the true maniac that I am. But ultimately, they let me go, which
Mm.
was good.
Because you're the cool kind of maniac people need to be challenged with, Joe. And that's like, it's admirable. As I mean, I'm 25, and I say this with no disregard at all, because I think that when I watch, people like you do what you're doing, no matter how crazy it may seem, I could only imagine the things that people are saying after they get done working with you, of all being good things about progress and building for a better future of whatever that might be, you know and
I don't know, but a lot of people, I'm tough to work around, but I think you'll reach, close to your potential because I'm not going to let you slack.
mm,
I'm going to push you. So, um, it's not, who the hell, who wants to be around somebody that's going to wake you up at 4:45 in the morning, that's going to tell you to take a cold shower, that's going to rip the Doritos out of you? Do you really want to be around that person? Deep down, subconsciously, it's the right thing, but you don't want that. You
mm,
want Netflix. You want
yeah.
popcorn, you know?
Are there times where you feel like you're giving yourself permission to do Netflix and popcorn at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. Sunday, by the way, I'm
Right.
normal, just like everybody else.
That's why I
Sunday,
asked.
I was exhausted for like 2 or 3 hours, and I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I gotta find something to watch right now because
Mm,
if I fall asleep, I'm gonna have a tough time going to sleep tonight. So I can't fall asleep. So I gotta just watch something. I gotta buy some time. I am exhausted, and I found some Viking series that I watched, and it inspired me. So then I went and worked out.
yeah. It doesn't stop and it won't stop. I mean, but here's my next question. There's often a misconception with someone like you or anybody who has such a very strong routine of how you live your life, that for people would almost, again, misconcept that you wake up at 4:45 and you probably go to bed at a certain time at night and you're nonstop until then. But if you were to look any of them in the face and say, hey, you know what, that's not exactly how it is. I have a little bit of normalcy to my life. Again, the Netflix and the popcorn version of Joe. What does he look like? I guess on a Sunday, for instance. So that just, that again, like, is a misconception of anybody who is waking up that early and has such a strict schedule of life and business.
I mean, look, I have some non-negotiables, right? I'm gonna get up early. It's a non-negotiable. I'm gonna sweat before breakfast. I'm gonna earn my breakfast
Mm,
thanks to Jack LaLanne and his wife, his widow. I'm gonna take an ice cold shower, right? Non-negotiable. I'm gonna wait till 9 a.m. to eat. Although to
mm,
show you that
mm.
I'm human, this morning I slipped up and I ate at 8 a.m. And it's non-negotiable. I don't eat until 9. But you know why I did it? I was leaving my house. I was in a rush, and my daughters had not finished their breakfast. And again, I
Mm.
can't waste stuff. I just can't waste stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm going to eat it off their plate, even though it's 8 o'clock.
The
It's not
body's
9 o'clock.
hungry.
But then I go down the list, and the other thing that's not to go, I'm going to bed early. I'm going to bed early. Somebody taught me, one of my buddies taught me this great concept of set your alarm at night, not in the morning.
Hmm.
Like it's important when you go to bed, and then you'll automatically wake up early.
Yeah.
But if you go to bed at all kinds of crazy times, it's going to be hard to wake up early.
Yeah.
I try to be sleeping by 9.
Yeah. No, I get that, so that you can actually get the ample amount of sleep too. The thought that some folks think that you have to work so hard. I wanted to bring this up with you. You have to work so hard, you have to not get sleep, and sometimes that ends up defeating your body more than anything. So when you've been coaching folks, especially if as their body has to take on something like the Spartan race, and or they just have to like operate a business through no retreats show, what would you tell them in terms of just understanding that sleep has to be a priority. Eating healthy has to be a priority. And just like, what are those top tricks that you've mastered in the sense that you've still been able to maximize your day and successfully do so for how you see as a +1, as you had mentioned?
It's so simple.
Mm.
And again, I was on Wall Street for a long time, and we make it much more complicated than it needs to be because it's we're capitalists, and
Mm.
as capitalists, we want to sell each other stuff, and so we brand all kinds of things that ab rollers and shake weights and all kinds of stuff that we're selling people, right? Cigarettes that you think you need. Um, you want to run a business, you want to live an optimal life, you want to have a great spouse, a great family. You need to treat yourself like an Olympian to do that successfully. And Olympians don't go to bed all hours of the night.
Mm.
Olympians don't they don't eat garbage food. They're not dehydrated, right? But to treat yourself like Olympian again, you don't need a special mattress to go to bed early. You don't need
Mm.
all kinds of supplements in your cabinets. No, you need some electrolytes.
Yep.
I'm gonna sound commercial here. I don't mean to be, but like I came up with a very simple electrolyte pill. It's just a tiny little pill. You swallow it. You don't have to get a blender or powders or anything because I just wanted it to be super simple. Like you actually need electrolytes. You
Right.
actually need water. You don't need 500 kinds of drinks with all kinds of sugar and this thing and that. You don't need
Mm.
it. You need
Hmm.
water. You need electrolytes. You don't need coffee with 500 calories of whipped cream and sprinkles all over. You don't need any of that. Wake up early, work out, don't eat till 9, eat more salad than other stuff, um, drink water, get your electrolytes. By the way, you wouldn't need our electrolyte pill if the
Mm.
soil in the ground, number one, assuming you're even eating greens, which is a big assumption,
Mm.
and the greens are grown in soil that are loaded with electrolytes because they haven't been depleted. Another probably not the case,
Hmm.
then you wouldn't even need them. So I guess my point is, if you want to succeed in business, if you want to succeed in relationship, you want to succeed in life, you got to treat yourself like an Olympian, and that does not require $2,000 recovery boots. You don't need them.
Right. I know what you're talking about. Do you take yourself as a minimalist in that case?
Yeah,
If you had to
I
put a
go
title,
back.
I mean, titles are stupid, as I'm sure you
No,
probably agree with,
I
but
think Spartan in general was a minimalist society. It was a
mm.
minimalist culture. I mean, they said very little, but when what they said was very impactful. Like when
Mm.
the enemy said, if we come there, we're gonna kill all of you, and they wrote back, if. That was it. If you're really gonna come here, come on, you're not coming here. But the point, very simple food. Like we could eat as much as we want as long as it's black soup. They
Mm.
recognized very early on that if they have 500 different kinds of meals and special chefs coming in from Athens, they're going to waste all this time talking about, you know, uh, all kinds of fancy foods and culinary experts and wines. And they said, that's all a waste of time. We got to
Mm.
train. We want to be warriors. Black soup. That's all you get, right? Kind of like the soup Nazi in Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Anything you want as long as it's black soup. And it was a
Mm.
brine. It was pig knuckles. It was barley. It was eating to live, not living to eat, right? So very few words, very little choices of foods, lots of training. They didn't believe in legacy. They didn't want to leave a ton of palaces behind. All that stuff was nonsense. They
Mm.
believed, let's just do a great job in the here and now. And if we do a great job in the here and now, um, we'll leave some sort of legacy. And so here we are, 2,500 years later, on an
Mm.
advanced podcast talking about the Spartans because they just did a great job in the here and now. So
Yeah. Using the same microphones. Joe and I have the same little Shure mic thing. And these,
we have a
which,
we actually have a string and a cup.
yeah. I wish it were that simple. I've often asked my parents this, that I I always ask them because they were born in the 60s, and they often say that things are getting way too complicated and we're just overstimulated as a society. Things are way too complex. And you alluded to it twice already, just from us sitting here for the past 40 minutes. And from your perspective as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, and as a father, when you think of how overcomplicated things have gotten in one's life, what can you tell us about making it simple enough to just focus on what really matters? I guess to one who's in pursuit of something they care about.
Well, by the way, it's easy to get sucked up in it. The kids, we have the farm, which is where No Retreat's being filmed,
Mm-hmm.
and where Spartan was started up in Vermont. And the kids were born on that farm and they grew up on that farm. And since we've moved all over the world and we're in Florida right now,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to get sucked up in the stuff that's nonsense because everybody around you is sucked up in the nonsense.
Yeah.
And on the farm, there was really no nonsense. It snowed a lot, it rained a lot, and when like you had to go outside, and we had to go hike the mountains, and it just was a very simple life. Now, you don't get the best soccer teams when you live, in a rural setting like that
Sure.
on the farm. You don't get the best wrestling teams for the kids. It's not like the kids are interacting with tens of thousands of kids, but it is a simple life. And maybe we'll go sleep in the cabin tonight. And there's something to be said for that,
Yeah. Do you think it allows room for creativity and just for your mind to explore as well? Because I feel like overstimulation but it ultimately will probably lead to you kind of being so distracted mentally that you can't necessarily focus on what you're building or doing, or like you had said, soccer. Like even if you just want to play soccer, to do it in somewhere like New York City could be very challenging because there's too many things happening, let alone other cities in the country.
No doubt about it. Just think all the stuff we are bombarded with on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and then trying to leave room for some creativity. It's tough, but when I was out on the farm, I got lots of time to think. And when I bring people up to the farm, again, I've been bringing people up to the farm for 22 years. You bring people up to the farm, you see the change that occurs in them.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely, everybody needs a little more simple in their life. By the way, we make it complex on ourselves. We do it to ourselves.
Yeah. I think what Joe is saying here is that we all need to move to the farm. We need to move to the farm and learn a little something and come back to reality.
If I had my way, and if I had some say in how a country could be run or the world could be run, we'd wake the entire country up at 5 a.m. Obviously, we would accommodate for time differences in California, whatever, but everybody would get up at 5 a.m. And the first thing everybody would do is they'd have to work out. Mandatory, nationwide workout. And not because we want to be like a military state or anything, but because they're going to be happier. I did a podcast 2 weeks ago with an academic, a neuroscientist, and she didn't even understand exercise. It was a waste of time. She wanted to spend her time in the laboratory, and then she stumbled upon it because somebody lent her a bicycle, and she couldn't believe how good she felt. She was no longer depressed, and so she started studying the brain and the body and the effects of exercise. And she listed off 8 or 10 things that you and I know, but like, it's nice when an academic, when somebody cerebral is like, no, oh my God, exercise does this. And here's one that you didn't even know. No one knows. Lactic acid, which we've been running from, right? Like, oh, we can't build up lactic. It cleans the brain. How's that? So like, you really want to sit on the couch all week and watch Netflix? Why don't you generate a little lactic acid and clean the brain so that you could see the show you're watching a little more clearly? Right?
Wait, how would you then? I mean, now here we are talking science. Wait, when you want to get lactic acid in your system, what does that look like? Did she mention?
Exercise.
Yeah.
Exercise.
Solely
Heavy
through
exercise produces lactic acid.
Yeah.
And it's always been viewed as a negative, like, oh,
Sure.
I'm sore, right? You got to exercise, but I'm sure some some capitalist will come up with a lactic acid pill.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to say that.
So you don't have to exercise, right? And you could just stay and watch Netflix and pop lactic acid pills.
Yeah, pop lactic acid and popcorn.
I'm not
right?
picking on Netflix, by the way. I'm just
We have said that 3 times. Well, they brought out that term, Netflix and chill, for so long. You know, it's Netflix chill. You know, everything is good in moderation, and I'm sure you know that better than I do, for sure. When I was researching you, and I had talked with Danielle about the show coming out, and I'd watched the trailer, I couldn't help but think that you always wanted to bring out the best in people, even though you would call it sometimes, you know, kicking someone's ass or beating people up. It has proven, like you had said, over 22 plus years now, that you bring out the best in folks and get them in pursuit of something that is worth chasing for them. So as you started doing that, especially in its infancy, not just of Spartan, but you being an entrepreneur and caring enough about people to be a coach and a leader in that area, I have to ask you, who inspired you to do that, if anybody? Who was in your life that kind of brought out the best in you?
my mom. I mean, my dad was amazing business person, gave me so many insights and tips and tricks. And when I reflect back on all the dinners and sitting around the table with him that I did, I wonder if he was purposely planting all the conversations to teach me. In other words, they just weren't happening on their own. They were curated conversations, I have a feeling. So he was amazing. But mom, she broke the mold. We're in an Italian neighborhood. She stumbles into a health food store in the 1970s. It's probably the only health food store in New York at the time. You know, the incense was burning, and it was near Kennedy Airport. So there was a yogi, like an old yogi, had just landed from India in the health food store. She bumped into him, and he somehow convinced her. She was open-minded enough. He somehow convinced her to throw away the raviolis and sausage and peppers and become vegan and start, you know, practicing yoga and meditating. And
Yeah.
this was pretty hardcore, pretty out there in the 70s. There were no Whole Foods, there were no yoga journals, and so she just gave me this. And again, I'm going to a Catholic school with my sister at the time, right? There's Catholicism is right, everything else is wrong. And here's my mom breaking the mold and saying, wait a minute, you know, all religion is okay if you're a good person and you do the right thing. Like, I hadn't been taught that as common sense as that sounds, right? I hadn't been taught that, like, the stomach can't handle food 24 hours a day. You can't be constantly putting, like, it sounds silly, but in the 1970s, when you're surrounded by pizza places and grocery store and
You wanna
everything else,
eat.
yeah, you want to eat a TV dinner. Like, why shouldn't you eat a TV dinner, right? Like, so, but my mom, she went out on a limb, fought the whole world in our little, you know, community, and really taught me most of this stuff. And then the neighborhood taught me, right? Because the neighborhood, a lot of people got in trouble and went to jail for 20, 25 years. So that sprinkled in a little bit of, like, hey, are you tough enough? So that was good, a good education. And then my dad was just the ultimate. He was in the pentathlon of business, like, just nonstop. Owned a disco, owned a pizza place, had greenhouses, owned a trucking company, an air freight company, a shipping company. Like, dabbled in all of it, which allowed me to learn little bits and pieces of all kinds of industries. Ultimately, he went bankrupt, which was another incredible lesson for me to see. So lots of mentorship along the way. And with all the people I describe, the one common thread through everybody that I was around was they had high energy. They were just beasts, right? And so that's what I got. I got high energy. And why wouldn't you want? I want to be the battery that's. I don't want. You stick a battery inside of a headlamp and it's, you know, it's got no energy. The headlamp doesn't turn on. I want to be the battery that gives people energy, that turns the lights on. You know.
Yeah. Wow. You I wrote this down. I was like typing it. So when you saw if it and I'm always so transparent about these Zoom calls, there's a runner show sitting right below Joe's video in his face. And if I hear anything that I'm like, whoa, I'll type it out really quickly with my right hand. And you had said incredible lesson from your father and the bankruptcy. And I'm sure you've had plenty with your mom and dad as you were growing up anyway. If you could give us one incredible lesson that you've taught yourself about Spartan since that brand had been launched, or just since being on your own doing all of this and continuing to build everything out, what's one incredible lesson you've learned? And I would almost, the reason I ask, sorry, is because I would take you as someone who looks at the craziest and the hardest and this like the most downfall experience and said, damn, that was a lesson.
Well, I mean, a couple of lessons. One is just because everybody on your own team and that you bump into and your board of directors and your investors, just because they say it's a bad idea does not mean it's a bad idea. I mean, no one, I did a bunch of focus groups in Japan. It was obvious to me that Japan would be a good market for us if you considered Ninja Warrior coming out of Japan. It just seemed like the culture that would really embrace Spartan.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get buy-in. I did focus groups. Everybody winced in the rooms. Like it was just not going to happen in Japan. And so I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Everybody else was right. So I jumped on a plane and I convinced my family we're moving to Japan. We're going to live in Japan and we're going to figure this out because it does not make sense to me. And I was there one day, and I had it sorted out and there was a race and it sold out. And so even though everybody around you is telling you, that's not right. You need to do your own research. You need to test it yourself. If your gut is telling you there's something there, there's probably something there. The other thing I've learned during this journey with Spartan is, and this is a big one for life, is when I was a kid, I went into the gym. Maybe I was whatever, 13 years old, 14 years old. I went into the gym. I wanted wide shoulders. I wanted to look like 007. I wanted a six pack. I wanted all the things that every guy would want, things we were seeing, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger was popular at the time. And I worked out. And when you work out, as you know, and you lift some weights, like your muscles get some blood flow, and all of a sudden you look a little bigger in the mirror. And I was feeling good. And after a week or two, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then it occurred to me, wait a minute. I guess you just don't go to the gym for 2 weeks, get strong, and then it stays. I guess you have to do this forever. Like I hadn't considered that. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
and the reason I bring that up when it relates to Spartan is like you don't build a business and then just put it on autopilot. Like you got to do it forever. It needs constant shoveling, like in the basement of an old ship where you're shoveling coal into the furnace. Like a business just needs constant attention,
Yeah.
constant coddling, constant funding. It just doesn't stop. And so that was today. That was a realization again today. But and then the other thing, which you brought up earlier, is oh my God, when you do business in an industry that provides purpose for yourself, like when I get an email that says, hey, you changed my life. I stopped drinking. I lost 182 pounds. I'm back with my wife. I'm back with my husband. I gave up drugs. I almost killed myself, but then I remembered I had a Spartan race next week, so I didn't pull the trigger. When you get emails like that, and you're having a shitty day, like all entrepreneurs have, like I have, you're like, well, it could be worse, man. I could be selling handbags. I'm not selling handbags. No.
Yeah. And yeah, I was going to ask you earlier for any testimonials, and that you said it. You said it in answering that one. That these are the types of emails and notes you're getting from folks of lives that you are changing. Again, allowing me to go and find you and say, hey, please come on this podcast. Please share those stories. Please share your story. And here we are at the end of the episode now, just finding out a little bit more about Joe here and understanding that like it's okay to challenge yourself and it's a good thing. It's healthy. We both mentioned the word purpose on and off throughout this entire conversation. And I feel like that's kind of what people need to chase a little bit more of. I would never tell myself to tell people what to do, but I hope that these conversations are helping folks. So if you would click play, thanks for doing so. Joe, I have one selfish question for you as we wrap this conversation, because you've given me everything. You even dropped it. You said Japan, and I was like, damn it! Right here it says my selfish question for Joe. So I grew up in Japan in the U.S. My dad was an Air Force pilot, and what Japan taught me a lot of was that there's a lot of culture shock that I'm getting here in America. So I wanted to ask you, you already answered part of it, which is why you moved to Japan. And it was to solve the what you had thought of being a problem, like why aren't they launching this in Japan? And they did it, like you had said, day one. And so what did you learn from your experience in Japan, from having lived there, especially with your family? And then looking back now that you live in Florida, what was kind of the biggest difference that's allowed you to live a better life now here?
Well, I mean, I wish I was living in Tokyo right now.
Yeah.
Tokyo is amazing. It's I'm going to sound terrible when I say this, but I've lived in more places than Japan that are outside the US. And in most instances, once you land in any city in the United States, anywhere, everybody looks twice the size, literally twice the size. So that's disheartening. And by the way, it's happening around us, so it just becomes normal. So everybody's just getting bigger together because it's normal, right? So it feels much more. You just feel more intelligent when you live overseas. I don't know. You feel like it's forcing you to be a little out of your comfort zone, to do a little more thinking and have conversations with folks that are from another country and another culture, different beliefs. You get to open your mind up, with religions and rituals. Like you get to see monkeys, and you go to Kyoto, Japan.
The red-butted monkeys and the onsens, right?
You get to climb Mount Fuji. You get to see train stations that are spotless, that you could literally eat off the floor in the train stations that are packed. You get to go in a taxi where the taxi drivers are like Spartans. They wear white gloves. Their taxis are spotless, and they're treating it like the ancient Spartans, where it's like, we're just going to do a great job for our customer at that moment. And that's nice to be around. You go to any restaurant, and they treat the restaurant as if they're working on chiseling the Hope Diamond. I mean, they treat everything with just perfection. And that's nice to be around. It's really nice to be around. And then you go skiing up north, and snow is light and fluffy, and snows like 3 feet every night.
The best of all worlds in such a small place that's arguably the size of California, which is crazy. But I had to end there with you, because I feel like there's a lot of what Japanese culture that I've learned and grew up with that I now see you doing through the brand, and I'm sure through the show. So I'm really excited to watch it, man. And if you're listening now, again, thank you for clicking play. I will link everything of what Joe's up to and what he's already done and built. And this is 22 years of things I just can't wait to share with you guys in the descriptor below. But in the meantime, Joe, this was an incredible conversation. Thanks to you, your narrative, and your yes to coming on to this podcast. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.